Corporate finance practice problem using Excel. Net present value NPV with changing discount rate. Get ready, it's time to take your chance with corporate finance. Here we are in our Excel worksheet. If you have access to the Excel worksheet and would like to follow along, note that we are in the practice tab as opposed to the example tab. The example tab in essence being an answer key. Information on the left-hand side, we're going to populate that into the blue area on the right-hand side. We're going to go through another scenario where we are assuming we're going to put down an initial investment, and then we're going to assume that there's going to be a return on it multiple years into the future. This might be for equipment. This might be an investment. This might be to buy inventory, a project that we're putting money into. Similar kind of scenarios there. We want to take into consideration time value of money typically, and usually the two tools to do that are the net present value calculation and the internal rate of return calculation. Here, we're focusing in on the net present value. The thing that we're going to change now is going to be the discount rate, which could be called the hurdle rate, the required rate of return. That's the rate that we expect to get a return on to decide whether or not we're going to be putting money into a project or not. What we will do is change that discount rate with the same set of data to see the impact of the changes in that rate on the set of data. As you keep this in mind, a couple things you want to keep in mind with it. One, when you do the types of analysis, you might be analyzing multiple projects and you might have money to put into multiple different projects, and therefore any project that clears the required rate of return might be a project that you would think about putting money into. Or two, you might have a situation where multiple projects clear the internal rate of return and you're trying to decide between those different types of projects. And three, when we're thinking about different types of scenarios, we might then test this discount rate or change the discount rate in order to do so and consider what would happen if we had an increased discount rate as part of our decision-making process. We want to look at that in terms of theory, what will happen to the numbers, and in terms of logistics, in terms of how could you do that easily in an Excel worksheet. How can you set up your Excel worksheet so that you can then run these scenarios most efficiently? So we'll start off with our scenario here. We got the 100,000 we're going to put down. We're going to get back then the 30,000, the 80,000, and the 21,000 we're assuming in the future. We're going to present value that with the 10%. If we get to any number that's greater than 0 or greater, that means we will have received the 10% and might then accept the project. That 10% then not simply being interest or the time or the cost of money, like the cost of interest, the money devaluing over time, but also includes what we expect our return to be, our opportunity cost, what we can get elsewhere with our money. So we're going to say, all right, let's start this out. 0, 1, 2, 3. We're going to go ahead and center those, alignment and center those. Going to put the total on down below, total. And then we'll have our series of payments, outflows negative, inflows positive. This is an outflow that we started at period 0, the 100,000, so that we can get the inflows of equal to the 30,000. Going to then copy that and paste it down, Control C, down arrow, holding down Shift, down one more time, Control V. Note here that I'm taking this information directly from the data set. I'm not copying and pasting it. I'm not hard coding it. In other words, I'm not simply typing the number in or copying and pasting the number, because if I wanted to change the numbers on the left with the data input, I can do that most easily if I reference those cells. So I'm going to go up top. We're going to go to the font group and underline. I'm going to sum this up here, equals the SUM. The SUM, the sum of these cells. That means we have a net inflow of the 31,000, not taking into consideration time value of money. Now let's take into consideration time value of money. Negative present value, Shift 9. The rate is the 10%. I'm going to make that an absolute reference by selecting F4 so that I can copy it down. I expect, by the way, to get to the same number here because we're at time period 0 of the negative 100,000, but I would still put the reference here so that I can copy it down, making the entire column uniform. So then comma, we're going to say the number of periods we're going to say is 0, comma, because it's not an annuity but present value of 1. Future value is that 100,000 and enter. Let's do it a couple more times. Negative present value, Shift 9, rate 10%. I would make that an absolute reference to copy it down. $ before the B and 8. Selecting F4 on the keyboard is one way to do that. Number of periods would then be 1 period out this time, comma, comma, because it's not an annuity, but present value of 1, picking up the 30,000. There it is again. So we have that discounted back at the 10% to 27,273. Let's do it here. Negative present value, shift 9, rate 10%. Going to make that an absolute reference, selecting F4 on the keyboard. $ before the B and 8, comma, number of periods is 2 this time, comma, comma, because it's not an annuity, but present value of 1, picking up the 80,000, bringing that back. We get to the 66,116. Now, what I'm going to do now is delete these last two and just copy the first one down to show that we can then autofill this quite quickly, hopefully. Going to delete these two, pick up that first one, grab the fill handle, drag it on down. And so there we have it. I would then check the last one just to see that it does what I expect it would. It does. So then I'm going to go to the font group and underline and then sum it up in the outer column, summing it up. And we get the 9166. Now, you might be saying, if I get that 9166, that's kind of the money I get after taking into consideration maybe inflation, because that's what present value kind of tends to make you think. But the present value here is including the rate of return. Therefore, anything over 0 would mean that we cleared our rate of return. So the fact that it's pretty high, it's 9,000, after that is good, but anything above 0 would have included our return if that was our required rate of return in the discount rate. Also note that you could do this with a formula, and I'll just do that quickly here. The net present value formula would look something like this, equals the net present value. I don't find this to be as useful of a formula, by the way, because you might as well just do the table once you set up the data. But in any case, we're going to be picking up the rate, which is going to be the 12%, comma, the values. You have to pick up the values that are not including period 0, which are these three. Close up the brackets and then add the period 0 as a negative number. It's a negative here. And there we get our same number there. Let's make that blue. I'll make that blue just to have it match here, matching out. And then we'll make this one black and white like that. So it looks nice. It looks nice and professional. So there we have that. Now, note that if you wanted to change this, one way you could do this in practice is copy the tab over. If I wanted to say, well, what if I change that 10%? I could change it right here, right? And say, well, what if that was like 15%? Then that's what it would be. What if it was 20%? Well, then we wouldn't accept it. So I can do that here. Now, you might not want to do it on the same tab. You might make multiple tabs, right? I could make another tab, copying this over, holding down Control and dragging this to the right, making another tab and make this one with 12%. So I can copy them, or I might copy this whole section and drag it down here and whatnot and paste it. And so I can have them side by side, although you have to be careful with the absolute references. So that's one way you want to think about this, because I want to be able to change the data over here as easily as possible and get to my result being changed as easily as possible. So from just a logistics standpoint in terms of Excel, you also want to just kind of keep in mind when you're thinking about something like, well, I'm not sure what the discount rate is. I want to set my data up so that I can make changes to it and whatnot and see what the impact would then be on my results. I'm going to go back to the first tab over here. The other way we could do that, of course, is to copy this information here, paste it down below possibly, and do it again. As you do that, just note that the absolute references will still be pointing then to this 10%, so you'd have to adjust it if that was the format that you're looking at. So I'm going to go then down here. Let's do it again, and now assume everything's the same except for this is 15% now. We'll do the same calculation. I'll do it a bit quicker this time. 0, 1, 2, 3. Going to center those by going to the alignment and center. And just realize before I do that real quick here, if I was to change this and say, well, in this case, it looks like we're clearing that 10% quite well, right? And so then I might look at the internal rate of return to help me to compare to other projects that might be of a similar nature. So we probably, that one looks good here. Well, what if my rate was 15%? Well, then it clears it, but by much less. Now, you might say, well, that's only $386. That doesn't mean we're only making $386. That means that we cleared the 15% and still have 386 over that. Therefore, we're getting that 15% return, right? And then if our discount rate was 20%, then now this has become negative. So if I can find other projects for 20%, possibly there's good investing going on around, and I can get a return of 20%, then I would reject this project and we would put our money elsewhere. So it's dependent on, that discount rate that we're using. Bringing that back down to 10. Let's do it this way though, just recalculating with the 15 and the 20. So same thing, I'm going to put the total down here, total. And this is going to be negative the 100,000. Picking up then our stream of payments, the 30,000. Control C, down arrow. Shift down again, Control V to paste it. Then we're going to go up top to the font group, underline. Let's sum it up. Equals the sum of Shift 9, up arrow, holding down Shift, up arrows. There we have it. And I'm just going to do this quickly. Just go negative PV, Shift 9, rate 15% this time. That's the new thing. That's the change that happened. And then I'm going to select F4 on the keyboard, $ before the B and 17, comma, number of periods I'm going to say is 0, is that 0, comma, future value is that 100,000. Then I'm simply going to copy that down, putting my cursor on the fill handle, copying it down. There we have it, underline down here, font group, underline, and we'll say equals the SUM, Shift 9, summing them up. So there's that 386 that we saw last time, so that we're still clearing the 15%, so still possibly accepting it. Let's go ahead and put the NPV down here too. I won't recalculate it, but there's the NPV formula format. Let's do it one more time with the 20% because this is good times. Here's the change, 20%. We'll do the same thing. We've got period 0, 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to go to the alignment center, put the total on down below, total, and then the values negative on the outflow, 100,000, inflows starting with the 30,000, copying it, Control C, down arrow, holding down Shift, down arrow again, Control V to paste it, underline under the bottom one, font group underline, summing it up equals the SUM, Shift 9, up arrow, holding down Shift, up again, and enter. Present value calculations, negative present value, Shift 9, rate 20%. That's outside of my table, so I make that an absolute reference so I can copy it down, $ before the B and 26, comma, number of periods, 0, comma, because it's not an annuity but present value of 1, picking up the 100,000. Gonna do this with the keyboard this time. Control C, down arrow, holding down Shift, down arrow, Control V on the keyboard, going down to the bottom, then font group underline, and finally equals the SUM, Shift 9, up arrow, holding down Shift, up, and enter. Whew, there we go. There we have it at the 20%. Now we're not going to accept it because we got other projects over here. Apparently there's a bunch of projects that we can put our money in and get 20% return. So that's what we're going to do so that within 3 short years, we'll be able to get a bunch of money and rule the world. Actually, that last part shouldn't have, we said too much with that last part. I'll cut that out. But in any case, you could see how you could do the comparison here. So if you were to compare this and show this to somebody else, you could run basically different scenarios. And by changing your data over here, you can see it side by side, or you could basically put your information into a scenario like this, where you can say, hey, this is where we would be at 10%. This is where we would be at the 15%, assuming the same cash flows, and at the 20, obviously anything else could change as well. We might have a difference in terms of the initial investment, or most likely we might have changes in what we project the future cash flows to be, where we can also, make different scenarios and assumptions like that as well, which is common given the fact that we're trying to predict the future, which not many people can do. Like, we're obviously really good at it, but most people, they don't even know what's going to happen in the future. So they got to just guess.